You're watching the Money and Wealth Show. Our special guest this week is Garth Turner. Garth, you talked about opportunities for Canadians that we may not be aware of in changing times. Give us some specifics.
Well, as I said a couple of minutes ago, I do see equities going up. I think right now the stock markets, as volatile as they are, they're all trending above their moving averages. That tells us there's essentially a young bull market in place. I think that young bull is going to live for at least another year. So this is very good news for people to get kind of through a lot of the turmoil short term. Long term, as I said before, energy, oil, all of that stuff is going to do extremely well. And I think that international investments will do well. So, you know, there are some things you don't want to be near. Real estate is going down. Bonds are going down because interest rates are going up. And disposable income is going down because governments are having their fingers in our pocket like you will not believe over the next 5 years to pay for this debt hangover. So people need to understand tax avoidance is a very big issue. I deal with that a lot in this book, whether it's the RSPs or RESPs or TFSAs or alphabeti soup here, right? There's all this stuff, but there's so many tax shelters there that are for people, and they need to take advantage of them. People need to know how to make their mortgage tax deductible. They need to know how to put a mortgage inside their RSP. They need to know how to get money out of an RSP without paying taxes. All of this stuff is doable, and this is the time to learn.
A lot of the advertising on radio and television by financial institutions of all sizes these days is about consolidation of debt. Retire the high-interest credit card debt by consolidating around the home in many cases. Is this a viable strategy?
It can be, Sterling, it can be. You know, we've still got this prime rate right now of 2.25%. It's the cheapest interest rate that you or I have ever seen. And it's never going to happen again. This is a once in 100-year thing right now. So if you can go and borrow money at 2.25% and pay off that sucker of a Visa bill or some other borrowing you've got, that makes total sense. It also makes sense today if you've got an $800,000 house that's got $600,000 in equity, you might want to borrow $100,000 against the equity and go and diversify so you're not just caught in any kind of storm that comes along. And you can borrow that money as well at 2.25% and then write the interest off. So I think there is a role for borrowed money, but it needs to be done prudently, for sure.
You talk about Canadians' serious lack of diversification.
Oh, yeah.
What has got us to this point?
Well, it's what we talked about a minute ago. I think people are going through an inflationary generation, have traditionally just done the real estate thing. And they flipped houses and put more money in, basically saved nothing. You know, said, man, this has been a pretty good performer. I'm going to keep hanging on to this house or grow and get new houses. So at the end of the day, they end up maybe 50 years old with a big expensive house and not much else. That is a story that repeats over and over again. And I must say that the people who are most at risk because of this are the baby boomers. And there are 9 million baby boomers, 32% of the population, and they basically have the bulk of their net worth in residential real estate.
Yes.
So, and that really now is why they're not diversified, Sterling, because, you know, they just don't have that. So I know some people think it's going to go up forever, but it ain't going to happen because real estate is supply and demand. And people only will continue to buy it if they can afford it. And if prices get out of whack, as they did in the States and as they are here now, if interest rates go up, affordability goes down. These people are sitting ducks. I mean, let's not forget how it felt in the fall of 2008. The market was going down 500 points a day.
We were panicking.
People being laid off by the 20,000s,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
We were freaking out. How many houses were selling in any major Canadian market? Like zero, okay? Don't forget how that felt. It came out of nowhere. It can come and happen again, and I think probably it will. So you need to have diversification. If all that storm hit and you had half your wealth sitting in stocks and bonds nicely allocated, you wouldn't have worried as much.
We Canadians somehow think that we're immune from the stresses and rigors that the U.S. market went through with massive foreclosures and all those negatives a year or two ago. Yeah. Is this a falsehood?
Well, we're different, but we're not immune. There are essential differences. We don't have a big foreclosure issue, nor will we. But what we will have, if I'm right, is what the Americans now are suffering from, which is negative equity. So they still have foreclosures, but the real issue is like normal middle-class families who never had a subprime mortgage, who never overextended themselves. The value of their homes have fallen below the value of their mortgages.
Right.
They're in negative equity. And they wake up one day and say, how the hell did that happen?
Sure.
Right? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't take a risk. So that's what can happen to us, because so many people have bought in the last few years with small amounts of money down in Canada. If the market falls 10 or 15%, they're in negative equity.
But we have this sense, and our banks reinforce it daily, that our system is better regulated and it's cleaner and tighter than just about every other system in the world, and there are all sorts of international publications that would agree with that. Mm-hmm. So we get a little smug here in Canada. Mm-hmm. So we fancy ourselves not as vulnerable to the real world of ebb and flow of economics.
Bunk. It's not true. Actually, Canada, with our 0% down mortgages and 40-year amortizations, we actually did that at exactly the same time as the Americans had subprimes. The Americans brought in teaser interest rates to get people into mortgages that they knew would go up later. Guess what we have right now? We have 2% and 3% mortgages we know are going to go up later. The Americans had liar loans. In other words, you want to have a loan, you didn't need to verify your income. I can go and get one of those any day of the week because I'm self-employed from any of the Canadian banks. You can get a 0% down mortgage from Scotiabank, TD Canada Trust, any of these guys. We're doing all the same things. We've actually approved people buying houses, not with appraisals, but by looking at what the postal code is of their homes, and then an automatic appraisal comes in. We have done all of those institutional things to make lending standards more lax, the same as the Americans have. And at the same time, we've overvalued real estate. I went down to Nashville, Tennessee, and spoke to the National Association of Realtors, and I probably told you this before, in the middle of the crisis in the fall of 2008, and realtors from right across North America were there, and I, in my presentation, put up a couple of Vancouver houses, and prices then, there were 100,000 less than they are today, and the whole auditorium gasped audibly. Nobody from across North America could believe that people in any city in North America would pay $800,000 or $900,000
for a pretty average house,
for an unrenovated bungalow.
Yeah,
they couldn't believe it. Okay, so what are we smoking? Mm-hmm.
Want to switch gears because you're a former politician and you love this particular.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
I absolutely did. I wouldn't let you get out of here without referring to it at least once. And some of your old pals in the political game in Canada, namely Stephen Harper and his government, have first of all billions of dollars in stimulus spending on the table right now, supposedly out there. Now they've determined that it's time to start cutting costs. Right. How is that going to impact on the average Canadian family?
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason the economy feels normal right now is because it's on drugs. All right, and there are lots of drugs going around. I mean, in the Lower Mainland, it's the Olympic drug, mm-hmm. and then across the rest of Canada, it's the 3% mortgage drug, and the economic stimulus drug, and the home renovation tax credit drug. So all of these drugs are flowing in from government into the system, making us feel all perky and good. But they are going to come out again. And it's inevitable because government can't afford it, and the debt levels are going crazy. There's not a province in Canada that is not in deficit right now. Mm-hmm. And the federal government is just wallowing in it. They will be cutting back. And this will happen at the same time as interest rates go up, taxes are going up, the HST's coming into BC and Ontario this summer, interest rates are going up this summer, and government spending is being cut back starting in the March 4th budget. And of course, you got the March 2nd budget here in British Columbia as well. So in that, you're going to see austerity in that. So there is no doubt that we'll have less government spending, more government taxes, and higher interest rates. I don't know how that makes people feel wealthier.
You're watching The Money and Wealth Show on Check TV. We'll be right back.